Wife her? She's beneath me.
I refuse to stand where I am not honored.
Wife her? She's beneath me. The words did not stumble out. They did not slip. They landed clean, confident, casual. A few feet away, Brielle Jackson stood frozen near the glass railing of the rooftop terrace, the Chicago skyline glittering behind her like a crown she never asked to wear. Laughter followed, low at first, then louder. Crystal glasses touched. A cork popped. Music hummed softly through hidden speakers. The city lights reflected off polished shoes and tailored suits. Chicago's elite gathered beneath golden heaters and soft lantern glow, celebrating what they believed was the merging of two futures. James Larkin stood at the center of them. Tailored tuxedo, relaxed posture, one hand resting lightly in his pocket, the other holding a drink he had not yet sipped. Everett Hale leaned toward him, grinned sharp with curiosity. "So, you're really going to marry her?" James did not hesitate. "Wife her? She's beneath me." He said it as if he were discussing market trends, as if he were analyzing a portfolio, as if he were calculating risk. More laughter. "She's intelligent," he continued. "No doubt about that. But marriage is alignment. Legacy matters. Image matters." Another voice chimed in. "She'll adjust." James gave a small shrug. "She's lucky I chose her." Brielle did not gasp. She did not drop her phone. She did not rush forward demanding explanation. She stood still. The engagement ring on her finger caught the terrace lighting, casting a faint shimmer against the glass railing. 3 years of partnership, 3 years of believing she stood beside him. Yet in this moment, she understood something with painful clarity. He never saw her beside him, only beneath him. The skyline stretched endlessly beyond her, bright and proud. Wind brushed lightly against her navy dress. Music carried on as though nothing had shifted. But something had, not in the air, not in the room, inside her. And the most dangerous thing about that moment? She did not feel broken. She felt steady. Let me ask you something. Have you ever overheard someone you love reveal who they truly are when they think you are not listening? Not during an argument, not in anger, but casually, comfortably, confident that you would never hear it. Have you ever stood in a room where you believed you belonged, only to realize your presence was conditional, that your seat at the table depended on approval, that your value was being measured? Brielle had not chased James for access. She had not molded herself to fit his circle. She had earned her space in every room she entered long before she met him. Yet in that moment, as laughter drifted through the rooftop air, she understood something many people discover too late. Some people love you privately, but rank you publicly. And that quiet ranking? It cuts deeper than open rejection. Because rejection is honest. Positioning is calculated. The most painful part is not hearing the insult. It is realizing you were proud of someone who saw you as an upgrade, not an equal. Think about it. How many times have you excused subtle comments? How many times have you told yourself they didn't mean it that way? How many times have you mistaken tolerance for respect? Brielle did not feel small. She felt informed. There is a difference. When someone reveals their mindset, they give you data. What you do with that data defines your future. She could have stepped forward. She could have forced an apology in front of the same friends who laughed. She could have defended her worth. But when dignity is questioned, defense is not always power. Sometimes silence is. And what she chose next is why this story matters. Here is the problem. Love without respect is negotiation. It is not partnership. It is positioning. James did not hate Brielle. He admired her mind. He enjoyed her presence. He was proud of her accomplishments when they reflected well on him. But admiration without equality becomes control. And control wrapped in charm is harder to detect. When he said she was beneath him, he was not speaking from anger. He was revealing hierarchy. In his world, relationships were mergers. Families were brands. Marriage was a strategic alliance. And Brielle? She was impressive. But not legacy. Not old money. Not born into a last name that opened doors before she knocked. That is how quiet superiority works. It smiles at you. It praises you. It even proposes to you. but it still ranks you. The danger is not obvious cruelty. The danger is subtle belief. Because if someone sees you as beneath them, eventually they will treat you accordingly. Not loudly, not immediately. Gradually, your opinions get filtered. Your visibility gets managed. Your power gets reduced to comfort. And the worst part? You begin to adjust. You begin to accept introductions that shrink you. You begin to rationalize comments about image. You begin to compromise pieces of yourself in exchange for peace. This is where many stories end, with someone brilliant choosing love over dignity, but this one does not. Because Brielle did something rare. She refused to compete for a seat she already deserved. And what she did next shifted more than a relationship. It shifted power. So stay with me, because what she chose to do the next morning was not dramatic. It was not loud. It was not emotional. It was not fueled by revenge. It was precise. Most people expect confrontation, tears, a public scene, a demand for apology. That would have been easy. But when someone shows you how they see you, the strongest response is not argument. It is decision. Brielle did not storm across the rooftop. She did not interrupt his circle of approval. She did not ask him to repeat himself. She understood him the first time, and understanding removes confusion. While the party continued, while glasses refilled and laughter rolled over the skyline, she walked to the elevator with calm steps. No one noticed, not the friends, not the investors, not the man who believed she was fortunate to be chosen. By sunrise, his world would feel different. By sunrise, silence would speak louder than any confrontation could. And if you have ever wondered what true self-respect looks like when tested, you are about to see it. Because dignity does not argue. It withdraws. Before we go further, I need you to decide something. If you believe dignity should never be negotiated, subscribe to this channel right now, because the stories we tell here are not about chasing love. They're about standing tall in it. And this one will stay with you. Now let me show you how she ended that night. The elevator doors closed softly as the rooftop noise faded behind her. Inside the mirrored walls, Brielle finally exhaled. Not a sob, not a tremble, a release. By the time she reached the penthouse, the city had quieted. The lake reflected the moon. Traffic moved in distant streams below. Their home looked the same. White marble counters, floor-to-ceiling windows, fresh flowers placed earlier that afternoon for the engagement celebration. She walked past the framed photo of them at the city planning summit where they first met. She did not hesitate. She moved to the bedroom, opened the closet, and pulled out one suitcase. Not everything, just essentials. Documents, laptop, a few tailored suits. Her father's old leather notebook she kept for grounding. 3 years reduced to one measured decision. When the suitcase was closed, she returned to the kitchen. The engagement ring felt heavier now. Not because of the diamond, because of the meaning. She slid it off slowly. For a brief moment, she studied it under the kitchen light. The same ring that had drawn admiration at galas and quiet envy at dinners. Then she placed it on the marble counter. No dramatic toss, no shaking hands. Beside it, she left a handwritten note. 14 words. I refuse to stand where I am not honored. That was all. No insults, no threats. No explanation. She turned off the lights, rolled her suitcase toward the door, and walked out before sunrise touched the skyline. Upstairs, James slept peacefully. He believed he was in control. By morning, he would understand something he had never experienced before. Absence. Brielle Jackson did not grow up around penthouses or private clubs. She grew up on the south side of Chicago, in a brick 2-story house with a narrow porch and a maple tree her father planted the year she was born. The streets were busy, not glamorous, not quiet, but alive. Her father, Darius Jackson, ran a small auto repair shop 5 blocks away. Grease stained his knuckles permanently, and he wore that fact with pride. He fixed engines with precision and spoke little while working. Customers trusted him because he never overcharged and never cut corners. Her mother, Dr. Nadine Jackson, worked long hours at a community health clinic. She treated patients who paid in installments, who missed appointments because of double shifts, who needed someone to listen as much as prescribe. Brielle learned early that stability was built, not inherited. Dinner conversations revolved around zoning laws affecting local businesses, rising rent prices, and why certain neighborhoods received investment while others were ignored. She listened more than she spoke. She asked questions that adults paused before answering. She saw how city decisions shaped lives. She noticed how power operated quietly. By the time she reached high school, she understood something clearly. Influence did not always wear a uniform. Sometimes it wore a tailored suit and signed documents in offices far from where consequences landed. She did not resent wealth. She studied it. She wanted a seat at the table where decisions were made, not for prestige, but for impact. That ambition became her compass. Darius never lectured about pride. He demonstrated it. If a customer spoke down to him, he did not argue. He simply declined the job. "We fix cars," he would say calmly, "not attitudes." Brielle watched that boundary hold firm year after year. From her mother, she learned presence. Dr. Nadine never rushed through patient visits, even when schedules overflowed. "People feel when you see them," she told Brielle once. "Respect is not loud, it's consistent." Their home carried two core rules: earn your place, never shrink to be accepted. When Brielle received her first academic award, her parents celebrated her effort, not the trophy. When she lost a debate competition in college, they praised her preparation, not the outcome. They did not romanticize struggle. They prepared her for rooms where she might be underestimated. Her mother once said something Brielle never forgot: "If someone invites you into their space but makes you feel smaller once you arrive, leave. Not dramatically, not angrily. Just leave." Brielle absorbed those words, without realizing how deeply they would guide her later. Her parents never spoke about legacy families or elite circles. They spoke about character. To them, dignity was not negotiable, not in business, not in love. So when Brielle eventually entered rooms filled with polished influence and inherited status, she carried something stronger than insecurity. She carried foundation, and that foundation made her confident enough to stand tall in any environment, even the one where she would meet James. The Chicago Urban Development Summit took place in a downtown convention center overlooking the river. Glass panels framed the skyline. Developers, investors, nonprofit leaders, and city officials filled the hall. Brielle stood at the podium wearing a charcoal blazer and a calm expression. Her presentation focused on equitable housing development in underfunded neighborhoods. She spoke about data patterns, displacement rates, and long-term economic mobility. She did not use emotional appeal alone. She used research. Slides displayed projected growth models that prioritized both profitability and community stability. She did not rush. She did not apologize for conviction. When a senior developer questioned her projections, she answered without defensiveness, referencing comparable case studies and funding breakdowns. The room shifted, not because she was the youngest speaker, not because she was different, but because she was prepared. In the third row sat James Larkin, representative of Larkin Holdings. He leaned back at first, listening casually. But halfway through her presentation, he straightened. His attention sharpened. She did not notice him. She was focused on the room. When she finished, applause followed. Not polite applause, engaged applause. During the networking break, he approached her. "You command a room," he said. She smiled slightly. "I come prepared." Their handshake lingered half a second longer than necessary. That was the beginning. James grew up inside rooms like that summit. Boardrooms, fundraisers, private luncheons. He understood influence instinctively, but Brielle intrigued him because she did not seek validation from it. She spoke to impact, not ego. When she challenged a funding structure during a panel discussion later that afternoon, he watched how older executives adjusted their tone in response. She was not intimidated. She was precise. After the event, he invited her to coffee to discuss potential collaboration. She accepted, cautious, but curious. Over coffee, he asked about her vision for community redevelopment. She explained her long-term framework with clarity and focus. He admired her discipline. He admired that she did not flatter him. Most people treated him with subtle deference once they recognized his last name. She did not. That contrast drew him closer. To him, she felt refreshing. To her, he felt connected to opportunity. He introduced her to certain industry contacts. He invited her to small private gatherings, where decisions were often shaped before public announcements. She entered those spaces carefully. He enjoyed watching others realize she was not an accessory. She was capable. At first, his pride in her felt supportive. He would introduce her and step back, allowing her to speak for herself. But beneath that admiration was something quieter. He liked being the one who opened the door. Their relationship developed naturally at first. Late-night conversations about urban reform, walks along the river after industry events, shared ambition. He listened when she spoke about childhood experiences shaping her passion. She listened when he described the pressure of carrying a legacy surname. He admitted that sometimes he felt more like a representative than an individual. She understood pressure. They bonded over responsibility. He appreciated her independence. She appreciated his access. He invited her to private dinners. She invited him to community forums. They challenged each other intellectually. When he proposed after 3 years, it felt like alignment. He told her he loved her mind first. She believed him. He said she was different from anyone he had dated. She took that as respect. Their chemistry was not built on glamour. It was built on ambition. They believed they were equals moving toward a shared future. But equality is not measured only by conversation. It is measured by mindset. And slowly, subtle differences began to surface. It started with small comments. "You don't understand how legacy families operate. My mother values tradition. Some rooms require strategy." He would say these things gently, often followed by reassurance. "Trust me, I'm protecting us." Brielle did not feel insulted. Not at first. She assumed he was navigating complexities she had not grown up around. But the pattern grew. At one foundation dinner, he adjusted how he introduced her. Instead of highlighting her firm's vision, he emphasized her education. At another event, he advised her to avoid discussing certain housing policies because they made investors uncomfortable. She told herself compromise was part of partnership. Yet something shifted inside her. She noticed he spoke differently about legacy, about image, about perception. He began to frame marriage as alignment between families, not individuals. It was subtle, never overt, never harsh, but it suggested hierarchy. She ignored it because love felt stronger than interpretation. She believed respect would deepen over time. She believed shared ambition would override class assumptions. She believed his admiration meant equality. She did not yet understand that admiration and superiority can coexist quietly, and that quiet imbalance would eventually surface in a single sentence that changed everything. The first time James said it, they were seated in his parents' formal dining room. Long mahogany table, crystal, stemware, portraits of past Larkins lining the walls, each framed in gold, each expression steady and composed. Helena Larkin asked Brielle about her firm with polite interest. Conrad listened more than he spoke. Conversation moved smoothly until Brielle mentioned a proposal that challenged long-standing development practices favoring established contractors. Helena's smile tightened slightly. After dinner, in the car ride home, James exhaled and adjusted his cufflinks. "You have to understand," he said gently, eyes forward. "Legacy families operate differently." Brielle turned toward him. "Differently how?" "There are expectations, relationships that span decades. Relationships that span decades. You can't confront everything directly. Sometimes it's about preserving alliances." His tone was calm, instructive, not critical. She considered his words. He had grown up in this world. He knew the unspoken codes. "I wasn't confronting anyone," she replied carefully. "I was discussing policy." "I know," he said quickly. "And you were strong. I just don't want you misunderstood." Misunderstood. The word lingered. He reached for her hand. "You're brilliant. I just want to help you navigate these circles." She nodded slowly. She told herself he was sharing experience. Yet beneath the advice was a subtle implication. This world belonged to him. She was entering it. And she should move carefully. The comment surfaced again weeks later during a private foundation event. The ballroom was filled with donors and trustees dressed in muted luxury. Conversations revolved around endowments, art acquisitions, and strategic partnerships. Brielle wore a deep emerald gown, understated yet elegant. She spoke confidently with a nonprofit director about affordable housing initiatives when James joined them. As the conversation shifted toward community advocacy, James gently redirected it. "We're exploring balanced investment models," he said, smiling. "Approaches that consider long-term market stability." Later that evening, as they waited for their car, he spoke quietly. "Image matters at events like this." She frowned slightly. "Was something wrong with what I said?" "Not wrong," he replied quickly. "Just intense. Some donors prefer gradual language. It's about comfort." Comfort. She replayed the conversation in her mind. She had not attacked anyone. She had spoken about data and lived realities. "You're passionate," he added, "and I admire that. But sometimes tone affects perception." Perception. The word felt heavier than it should. She adjusted the strap of her purse and looked at the city lights ahead. She had built her voice on clarity. Now she found herself measuring how that clarity might appear in rooms shaped by wealth. James was not dismissing her ideas. He was moderating them. And each time he did, he framed it as refinement. Control rarely announces itself. It suggests. It guides. It frames itself as care. James began offering more advice. "Let me handle the negotiations with my father. It's better if I introduce you before you speak. Trust me on this one." Each statement carried reassurance. A kiss on her temple. A hand at the small of her back steering her gently towards certain conversations and away from others. At first, she appreciated the support. He had access, she did not. Connections that moved projects forward. But over time, she noticed a pattern. Decisions involving his family's firm rarely included her input beyond surface discussion. He would summarize meetings after they happened, rather than inviting her to them. When she questioned it once, he smiled lightly. "I'm shielding you from unnecessary tension," he said. "You don't need to deal with internal politics." Shielding, the word suggested vulnerability. She did not feel fragile. She felt capable. Still, she allowed it. She told herself partnership meant trust. She told herself collaboration sometimes required stepping back. He never raised his voice, never dismissed her openly. He simply positioned himself as gatekeeper, and she, without realizing it, began walking through doors he chose. Late at night, when she lay awake staring at the ceiling, she would replay certain moments. The way Helena had once referred to her as refreshing, the way Conrad asked questions about her background with careful neutrality, the way James occasionally corrected her phrasing mid-conversation. None of it was overt, none of it was insulting. So she reasoned through it. Every family has dynamics. Every industry has codes. Every relationship requires adaptation. She believed growth meant flexibility. She reminded herself that James proposed because he valued her. He said he admired her independence. He said he respected her ambition. And he still did. He praised her presentations. He celebrated her contract wins. He posted photos of them together, with captions about partnership and future plans. Publicly, they looked aligned. Privately, she noticed she was adjusting more often than he was. She chose her words carefully around his parents. She softened critiques at industry gatherings. She allowed him to frame certain decisions. She called it strategy. She did not call it compromise. Yet somewhere beneath her reasoning, a quiet discomfort formed. Not loud enough to demand action, just present enough to be felt. The engagement celebration took place on a private rooftop terrace overlooking Lake Michigan. Golden heaters lined the perimeter. Jazz music floated across polished stone flooring. Waitstaff moved seamlessly between guests carrying champagne and delicate plates. The guest list reflected influence. Board members, investors, family friends, long-standing associates of the Larkin name. Brielle arrived in a navy silk dress, confident but aware of the eyes assessing her. She greeted guests warmly, answered questions about her firm, and thanked people for attending. James moved easily through the crowd, one hand occasionally resting at her waist, guiding introductions. "She's brilliant," he would say. "She's ambitious. She's impressive." Compliments, delivered with pride. Yet something felt performative. As the night progressed, she noticed small clusters forming. Legacy circles within the celebration. Conversations layered with history she had not lived. She stepped away briefly to answer a call from her mother, who congratulated her with warmth and reminded her, "Stay grounded. When she ended the call, she paused before re-entering the crowd. From a distance, she saw James laughing with Everett Hale and two other longtime friends near the terrace edge. She began walking toward them. She did not yet know that a single sentence was about to clarify every unease she had quietly dismissed. Everett Hale thrived on provocation. He came from a family adjacent to the Larkins in status, but louder in personality. He enjoyed testing boundaries in conversations, often framing blunt remarks as humor. As Brielle approached, Everett lifted his glass and leaned toward James. "So you're serious about marrying her?" His tone carried curiosity layered with challenge. James smirked lightly. "Of course." Everett tilted his head. "You're locking this in? For good?" A brief pause followed. James adjusted his jacket sleeve. "Wife her?" he said, voice steady. "She's beneath me." The words cut clean. Laughter erupted instantly. Not shocked laughter, familiar laughter. Everett raised his glass higher. "There it is." James continued, unaware she stood only steps behind him. "She's intelligent, no doubt. But marriage isn't only about love. It's alignment. Legacy matters. Image matters." Another friend added, "She'll learn." James shrugged. "She's lucky I chose her." Brielle felt the terrace air shift against her skin. Not cold, not warm, clear. She had spent months adjusting tone, moderating conviction, trusting guidance. In one sentence, he revealed the hierarchy beneath it all. She was admired, but ranked. The skyline stretched behind him as if framing the truth. And this time, she did not rationalize it. She understood. The terrace doors closed behind her without drawing attention. Music continued. Glasses clinked. Voices overlapped in polished laughter. No one called her name. Brielle pressed the elevator button with steady fingers. Her heartbeat was controlled, not racing, not trembling, just present. When the doors opened, she stepped inside alone. The mirrored walls reflected her from every angle. Navy silk dress, diamond ring, expression composed. The elevator began its slow descent from the rooftop toward the penthouse level. Floor numbers lit up one by one. With each passing floor, the noise above faded. The celebration that had honored their engagement now felt distant, contained in another world. She replayed his voice in her mind, not to hurt herself, not to analyze tone, to confirm clarity. He did not stutter. He did not joke. He did not whisper. He believed what he said. That belief mattered more than the words. A soft exhale left her lips. The mirrored panels showed no tears, only recognition. She understood something many people refuse to accept when love is involved. If someone places you beneath them in private conversation, they have already placed you there in their mind. The elevator slowed. Doors opened quietly. She stepped into the hallway of the penthouse they shared, heels clicking softly against polished flooring. No dramatic exit, no confrontation, just movement. And sometimes movement is stronger than reaction. The penthouse felt larger than usual. Open concept living room, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the dark lake, city lights blinking below. She walked through the space once, slowly, not to reminisce, to observe. The framed photo from the city planning summit rested on a console table. She did not pick it up. She did not turn it over. In the bedroom, the closet lights switched on automatically as she entered. His suits lined one side. Her tailored pieces lined the other. She reached for a medium-sized suitcase. Not the largest one. Not the carry-on. Measured. She packed deliberately. 2 navy blazers, 3 blouses, black trousers, laptop, important documents, passport. She skipped the evening gowns. Left the jewelry case untouched. Ignored the shoes purchased for foundation galas. Her movements were efficient. No frantic energy. No shaking hands. 3 years of shared space condensed into essentials. She paused briefly at the dresser where photographs from vacations stood side by side. She did not take them. Memories did not need storage. They needed perspective. When the suitcase was half full, she stopped. She did not need everything. She needed herself. The zipper closed smoothly. She placed the suitcase near the door. The apartment remained silent. Upstairs, celebration continued. Down here, decision had already been made. She returned to the kitchen. White marble counters reflected overhead lighting. A half-empty bottle of champagne sat chilled from earlier preparations. 2 unused glasses waited beside it. Her left hand rested lightly on the counter. The engagement ring caught the light again, brilliant and precise. The diamond was flawless, custom designed, publicly admired. He had knelt with confidence when he proposed. She had said yes with certainty. The ring symbolized promise, but promise without respect is presentation. She slid the ring slowly off her finger. For a brief moment, she felt the faint indentation it had left behind. Not pain, pressure. She studied the stone beneath the kitchen lights. It represented intention, commitment, future. Yet tonight, it represented hierarchy. She placed it gently on the marble. No dramatic toss, no bitterness, just finality. The soft clink against the counter echoed slightly in the quiet room. Her hand felt lighter immediately, not because of the weight of gold, because of the release of illusion. She flexed her fingers once, adjusting to the absence. Then she reached for a pen from the drawer. Some endings deserve words, but not many. She pulled a single sheet of paper from a leather-bound notepad, sat at the kitchen island. For a moment, she stared at the blank page, not searching for anger, not crafting a speech, searching for truth. She did not need paragraphs. She did not need explanation. He understood what he said. She understood what she heard. The pen moved steadily. I refuse to stand where I am not honored. 14 words. No accusations. No insults. No emotional appeal. Clear. She folded the note once and placed it beside the ring. The simplicity carried weight. This was not an attempt to wound him. It was a declaration to herself. Before turning away, she paused. Would you have confronted him in front of his friends? Would you have demanded an apology beneath rooftop lights? Or would you have walked away like she did? Think carefully, because strength does not always look loud. Sometimes strength looks like leaving before sunrise. If you respect that kind of decision, make sure you are subscribed. Stories like this are about choosing yourself when it costs comfort. She stood. No second guessing. No rewrite. The note remained where he would see it first. She turned off the kitchen lights one by one. The living room dimmed. The skyline beyond the windows began to soften as the first trace of dawn touched the horizon. She rolled the suitcase quietly toward the door. Her heels had been removed earlier. She moved in silence now. Before stepping out, she looked back once. Not at the furniture, not at the view, at the space where she once believed she belonged without condition. Then she opened the door. The hallway was empty. Elevator ride. Lobby. Doorman offering polite nod without questions. Outside, the air was crisp. The sky shifted from deep blue to pale gray. She placed the suitcase into the trunk of her car. Engine started smoothly. As she pulled away from the building, the sun began rising behind the skyline. Upstairs, James still slept. He would wake expecting routine, expecting continuation, expecting her. Instead, he would find absence. Ring. Note. Clarity had replaced confusion. And sometimes clarity does not destroy you. It frees you. James woke expecting routine. Morning light filtered through automated blinds. The penthouse adjusted temperature automatically. His phone rested on the nightstand beside him. He reached across the bed without opening his eyes. Empty. He frowned slightly, assuming she was in the kitchen. He checked his phone. No message. Unusual. Brielle preferred morning structure. She liked quiet coffee before the city fully stirred. She never left without informing him. He rose, adjusting his cufflinks out of habit even before fully thinking. The engagement party replayed briefly in his mind. Toasts, laughter, handshakes. He walked into the kitchen. The marble counter stood untouched. Then he saw it, the ring, placed neatly under the overhead light. Beside it, a folded note. His pulse shifted, subtle but noticeable. He stepped forward slowly, opened the note. I refuse to stand where I am not honored. The words did not accuse. They declared. He read them twice, then again. His jaw tightened. This was not a misunderstanding, not a dramatic gesture. This was decision. He replayed the night before, scanning memory for confrontation. There had been none. which meant she had heard, and she had not reacted. She had concluded. For the first time in years, something inside him felt uncertain. He checked the bedroom closet. Half her section was empty, the suitcase missing, bathroom counter cleared of essentials. She had not left impulsively. She had prepared. His breathing deepened. He pulled out his phone and dialed her number immediately. It rang. No answer. He called again. Straight to voicemail. He paced the living room, replaying conversations from months prior. Legacy families operate differently. Image matters. He had framed everything as guidance. He had believed he was helping her navigate. But the rooftop, the words, "She's beneath me." He pressed his palm against his forehead. He had not meant it as cruelty. He had meant it as comparison, as hierarchy, which was worse. He checked her location through their shared app. Disabled. He felt a tightening in his chest that he had never experienced before. Not anger, not embarrassment, loss of control. He tried again. Voicemail. He drafted a text. Call me. Deleted it. Rewrote. Can we talk? Deleted again. He was not accustomed to being ignored. People responded when he reached out. Partners negotiated. Competitors countered. Family discussed. Silence was unfamiliar. And silence unsettled him more than confrontation ever could. He dialed again. This time, he let it ring longer. When voicemail picked up, he did not leave a message. He called her assistant. No response. He contacted Zara Mendez. Professional tone answered. Is Brielle available? She's unavailable this morning, Zara replied calmly. James paused. Unavailable how? She's in meetings. Meetings. Already working. Already moving. He swallowed. Tell her I need to speak with her. I'll pass that along, Zara said, steady. The call ended. James stared at his reflection in the dark television screen. He had expected reaction. He had expected anger. A call demanding explanation. Instead, she moved forward. He considered going to her office but stopped himself. Would that look desperate? He had never chased before. He had always been pursued. Now he was outside the dynamic he understood. He dialed once more. Voicemail. He left a message this time. Brielle, I know you heard what I said. It wasn't. He stopped mid-sentence. Wasn't what? True. Intentional. Accurate. He ended the call without finishing. For the first time, he heard how his own words sounded when stripped of audience. And he did not like them. And he did not like them. By late afternoon, impatience overrode pride. He drove south. The neighborhood was familiar from earlier visits. Brick houses, narrow driveways, children riding bikes along sidewalks. He parked outside the Jackson home. Darius answered the door himself. Grease-free hands today, casual shirt, direct gaze. James forced composure. I need to speak with Brielle. Darius stepped outside, closing the door gently behind him. She made her choice, he said calmly. James inhaled. This is a misunderstanding. Darius did not raise his voice. My daughter doesn't misunderstand respect. The statement landed without aggression. She left without giving me a chance to explain, James said. Darius studied him quietly. Explain what? He asked. James opened his mouth. Closed it. He could not reconstruct his rooftop comment in a way that improved it. I was careless, he admitted. Darius nodded slowly. Careless with words reveals careful beliefs. The sentence struck harder than expected. James felt heat rise behind his collar. I love her, he insisted. Then learn what that means, Darius replied evenly. There was no threat, no hostility, only certainty. You don't get to define her value, Darius continued. She already knows it. The door remained closed behind him. And for the first time in his life, James stood outside without influence. Darius did not posture. He did not intimidate. He stood firm. James noticed the absence of performance. No need to prove dominance. No attempt to escalate. Just grounded presence. I would never intentionally hurt her, James said quietly. Darius folded his arms loosely. Intent doesn't erase impact. James swallowed. You built your life around legacy, Darius continued. That's fine, but don't confuse inheritance with superiority. The words were direct, not disrespectful. James felt something shift internally. He had always equated structure with strength, hierarchy with order, but standing there, outside a modest home built through steady effort, he recognized a different form of power, one not dependent on last names. "If you want her back," Darius added, "it won't be because you say the right thing. It will be because you change how you think." James looked toward the closed door briefly. "She deserves partnership," Darius finished. "Not ranking." There was nothing left to argue. James nodded slowly. He returned to his car quieter than he arrived. Driving back downtown, the skyline looked different, familiar, yet distant. He had spent his life certain of position, certain of leverage, certain of outcome. Now he felt something unfamiliar. Not humiliation, exposure. He replayed every subtle comment he had made over the past year. Every time he positioned himself as interpreter of rooms, she navigated just fine. He had admired her, but had he seen her as equal? The question lingered. At the penthouse, he entered a space that felt hollow without her presence. The ring remained on the counter. The note lay beside it. "I refuse to stand where I am not honored." He read it again. For the first time, he questioned his own framework. What did honor look like in partnership? Had he ever stood beside someone without calculating alignment? Internal conflict replaced confidence, not because she left without noise, and silence forced him to confront something no boardroom ever had: himself. 3 weeks later, Larkin Holdings convened its quarterly executive board meeting on the 42nd floor of its downtown headquarters. The boardroom was expansive, framed by glass walls overlooking Lake Michigan. A long walnut table stretched down the center, polished to a mirror finish. Digital tablets sat at each seat, prepared with agenda packets. James entered composed, tailored charcoal suit, measured stride, neutral expression. He had not spoken to Brielle since visiting her father. Calls had stopped. Messages unanswered. Silence remained intact. He told himself to compartmentalize. Business required clarity. Conrad Larkin sat at the head of the table. Helena to his right. Senior board members filled remaining seats. The Lakeshore redevelopment bid dominated the agenda. A multi-billion-dollar project. High visibility, long-term strategic value. Larkin Holdings had assumed advantage. Established reputation, political relationships, generational credibility. James presented preliminary projections with steady confidence. Market analysis, funding allocation, long-term asset appreciation. Board members nodded in approval. Everything felt controlled, predictable, until Roland Mercer, Chief Strategy Officer, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. "There's an update regarding the Lakeshore bid," he said carefully. James glanced up. Roland continued, tone neutral. "We have confirmed a competing proposal." Murmurs shifted lightly around the table. Competition was expected, but Roland's expression suggested something different. James leaned back slightly. "Who?" Roland tapped his tablet once. "An emerging firm with strong community backing." The room quieted. Roland did not rush. He rarely did. His reputation within Larkin Holdings was built on precision and preparation. He never brought incomplete information to the table. "The firm has secured early investor interest," Roland continued. "Preliminary reviews indicate a sustainable hybrid model prioritizing both profitability and community reinvestment." Helena tilted her head. "Name?" Roland paused just briefly. "Jackson Urban Impact." The name landed without immediate recognition from most of the room. James's expression did not change, yet something inside him tightened. Jackson. A common name. It could mean nothing. Roland continued. "They've gained endorsements from several neighborhood councils and urban planning advisors. Their proposal includes phase development tied to local employment pipelines." Conrad leaned forward slightly. "Who's leading it?" Roland's eyes moved toward the presentation screen. "I think it's best if you see the full overview." He dimmed the lights with a subtle tap. The glass walls darkened automatically. Board members straightened in their seats. James's jaw remained set. Professional, controlled, yet a faint instinct told him this was not coincidence. The screen illuminated the front wall of the boardroom. First slide. Clean design. Structured layout. Strategic clarity. Jackson Urban Impact. Mission statement displayed in sharp lettering. Development with dignity. Investment with accountability. James felt his pulse shift. Second slide. Financial projections. Growth models. Risk assessments. Not amateur. Not rushed. Disciplined. Third slide. Lead executive profile. The screen changed. Her photograph appeared. Professional headshot. Navy-tailored suit. Direct gaze. The room fell silent. Brielle Jackson, founder and CEO. Her credentials filled the screen beneath her image. Master's degree in urban planning. Policy advisory roles. Community development recognitions. Helena's posture shifted subtly. Conrad's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. James did not move. He studied the slide carefully. Founder, CEO. She had not left him to recover. She had left him to build. Whispers moved along the table. Strong background. Impressive trajectory. Community trust carries weight. Roland advanced to the next slide. Strategic partnerships. Funding breakdown. Projected 5-year yield. Everything structured with foresight. James recognized certain language patterns. Her voice was present in every line. Clear. Decisive. Unapologetic. She's positioned this well, one board member admitted. Helena folded her hands neatly. Do we know her background? Roland answered evenly. Yes. She's been building quietly for the past 2 years. 2 years. James processed that timeline. While they were planning engagement parties and discussing shared futures, she had been developing infrastructure. Not impulsively. Strategically. She's secured mid-level institutional investors, Roland added. And preliminary community buy-in appears strong. James finally spoke. Are they financially viable long-term? Roland met his gaze. Based on the data, yes. The room turned back toward the screen. Brielle's image remained projected across the wall. No ring, no reference to him, only title. Founder and CEO. Roland concluded the presentation. Their proposal challenges traditional development sequencing, he explained. They prioritize phased reinvestment before full asset scaling. Conrad leaned back thoughtfully. Innovative. Helena's voice was cool. Bold. James stared at the final slide. Jackson Urban Impact. Chicago Lakeshore Redevelopment Proposal. She was not retaliating. She was competing. The emotional balance had shifted. On the rooftop weeks earlier, he stood elevated among peers, evaluating her worth. Now her company stood across from his, in a billion-dollar bid. Equal footing. Possibly stronger public backing. The irony was not lost on him. She's positioning herself as the ethical alternative, Roland added. James inhaled slowly. She always believed in community-first models, he said quietly. Helena looked at him briefly. You know her? You know her? She asked. He did not answer directly. The board began discussing strategic responses, acquisition possibilities, public messaging, competitive counters. James remained silent. For the first time, the hierarchy he assumed felt unstable. She had not confronted him. She had surpassed him in the one arena he respected most. Influence. Power reversal does not shout. It presents data. And the data on that screen made something clear. She was never beneath him. She was building beyond him. 2 years before the rooftop night, Brielle sat across from Zara Mendez in a modest co-working office near the West Loop. No skyline views. No polished walnut tables, just exposed brick, folding chairs, and whiteboards filled with numbers. Zara had worked in municipal finance long enough to understand funding gaps in redevelopment contracts. She respected Brielle's long-term vision, and more importantly, her discipline. You're thinking 10 years ahead, Zara said once, scanning a draft proposal. I have to, Brielle replied. Short-term wins don't repair neighborhoods. Jackson Urban Impact began as structured outlines on legal pads. Brielle registered the company quietly. No press release. No public announcement. She studied zoning laws, mapped disinvestment patterns, analyzed tax credit structures. While attending galas beside James, she reviewed municipal funding briefs late at night. While discussing engagement venues, she finalized partnership terms with small community banks. She never hid her ambition. She simply did not broadcast it. Zara handled investor outreach with precision. Brielle refined the development model until every number aligned. There was no emotional fuel behind it, no resentment, no desire to compete. This was not a reaction to a relationship. This was continuation of a plan she began long before him. Her focus was impact. If she ever entered a room as an equal, she would do so through ownership, not association. Securing investors required patience. Jackson Urban Impact did not carry generational prestige. It carried data. Brielle met potential backers in quiet conference rooms, local banks, and community foundations. She presented projections grounded in measurable returns and social stability. "We are not asking you to choose between profit and purpose," she would say. "We are demonstrating how they reinforce each other." Many investors hesitated at first. Emerging firm, ambitious scope, competitive market. But her numbers were precise. Her long-term yield projections balanced conservative estimates with community reinvestment benchmarks. Zara structured financing models that reduced volatility through phased development. One mid-level investment firm took the first leap. Then, a regional credit union followed. Then, a housing impact fund expressed interest contingent on city approval. Momentum built gradually. No splashy announcements. No headlines. Just contracts signed quietly. The investors were not drawn to emotion. They were drawn to clarity. And clarity builds confidence. By the time the Lakeshore redevelopment proposal opened for bids, Jackson Urban Impact had foundational backing. Not because she wanted to challenge Larkin Holdings, because she was ready to lead. Brielle's model differed from traditional large-scale redevelopment. Instead of displacing residents during early construction phases, she structured phased occupancy transitions. Instead of prioritizing luxury units first, she balanced mixed income allocations from the outset. Her vision centered on stability, economic mobility linked to workforce pipelines, local contractor partnerships, community equity forums embedded into quarterly reviews. She understood something legacy firms often overlooked: trust compounds. If neighborhoods trusted the developer, long-term sustainability improved. Zara once asked her, "Do you think established firms will resist this?" "They might," Brielle answered. "But resistance doesn't invalidate viability." She did not frame her model as rebellion. She framed it as evolution. Her strategy included data transparency dashboards accessible to investors and city officials, accountability built into the structure itself. She anticipated scrutiny, welcomed it, because the stronger the model, the less it depended on perception. When she finalized the Lakeshore proposal draft, she felt no desire to prove anything to James. She felt readiness. The rooftop incident would not create this vision. It would simply remove distraction. The Lakeshore project represented more than profit. It represented influence over how Chicago would grow for decades. Jackson Urban Impact's proposal included multi-phase development with integrated public transit access, green infrastructure, and apprenticeship programs tied directly to construction contracts. She negotiated early agreements with vocational training centers to secure workforce placement before ground broke. She secured letters of support from neighborhood associations that had historically opposed large developers. Her plan balanced commercial space with affordable housing in a ratio that maintained long-term asset value without accelerating displacement. The numbers were disciplined, the messaging focused. When the final draft was submitted, she did not anticipate how personally significant it would become weeks later. She believed she was competing in a marketplace of ideas. She did not know she would soon compete against the man who once stood beside her. And when that competition emerged publicly, it was not fueled by anger. It was fueled by preparedness. The morning she left the penthouse, Brielle did not return to her parents' house to grieve. She drove directly to Jackson Urban Impact's temporary office space. Sunlight filtered through modest blinds as Zara looked up from her laptop. "You're early," Zara said. "I'm ready," Brielle replied. There was no visible collapse, no emotional breakdown. She placed her suitcase beside her desk and opened her laptop. On the agenda that morning was a final signature from a mid-level investor formalizing capital allocation for the Lakeshore bid. Zara studied her carefully. "Are you sure you want to review this today?" "Yes." They walked through the terms once more. Clean, precise, protected. When Brielle signed her name, her hand did not shake. This was not revenge. It was alignment with her values, with her ambition, with herself. Let me ask you something. What if the breakup wasn't your downfall, but your breakthrough? What if the moment someone underestimated you became the moment you outgrew them? If you believe growth can follow heartbreak, stay with this story, because she did not collapse. She expanded. And expansion changes power dynamics permanently. The meeting took place in a leased executive conference suite downtown, not at Larkin Holdings, not at Jackson Urban Impact. Neutral ground. Glass walls framed the space, but blinds were partially lowered for privacy. A rectangular table sat centered beneath recessed lighting. 2 chairs faced each other across polished wood. No audience, no assistants, no family legacy hovering in the background. Brielle arrived first, navy-tailored suit, minimal jewelry. Hair pulled back cleanly, no engagement ring. She placed her leather portfolio on the table and reviewed a document she did not need to read. Preparation had become instinct. When the door opened, James stepped inside quietly. Charcoal suit, measured expression, less certainty in his posture than usual. He closed the door behind him. For a moment, neither spoke. There were no rooftop lights now, no champagne, no observers, just distance measured in 4 feet of table. He noticed how composed she looked, not guarded, not fragile, grounded. "Thank you for meeting me," he said finally. She nodded once. "You asked for this." He took his seat. The air between them felt precise, not hostile. There was history in the room, but there was no intimacy, only unfinished accountability. James did not ease into the conversation. He did not comment on her firm, did not mention the Lakeshore bid, did not attempt small talk. "I was wrong," he said. The words were direct. She studied him carefully. "In what way?" she asked calmly. "In how I spoke about you," he replied. "In how I thought about partnership." He did not look away. "That wasn't a joke," she said. "I know." Silence held steady. He inhaled slowly. "I grew up measuring everything by alignment, family status, financial leverage, public image. I repeated that mindset without questioning it." She listened without interruption. "I didn't see how that thinking positioned you beneath me," he continued. "Until you left." Her expression did not soften. "You didn't see it when you said it?" she asked. He hesitated. "No," he admitted. "I believed it was logical." The honesty landed harder than denial would have. He did not minimize the moment, did not claim misinterpretation. "I valued you," he added, "but I also ranked you." The admission stripped away pretense. She leaned back slightly in her chair. "And now?" she asked. He met her gaze. "Now I see the flaw in that framework." Recognition did not restore trust, but it shifted the conversation. He did not blame alcohol, did not blame peer pressure, did not blame Everett. "I won't say I was influenced," he stated. "Those words came from me." She nodded once. "Accountability doesn't require context," she said evenly. "It requires ownership." He absorbed that. "I don't expect you to return because I apologized," he continued. "I'm not asking you to forget." "Good," she replied. Another quiet pause. He clasped his hands together briefly. "I've started reassessing decisions at Larkin Holdings. I'm reviewing how we structure development models, how we prioritize communities." She raised an eyebrow slightly. "Because of me?" "Because of what I realized," he corrected. "That mattered." "I'm not here to compete with your firm," he added. "You earned your position." She watched him closely for any trace of superiority. There was none. Only measured humility. But humility spoken once does not erase habit. "You understand why I left?" she said. "Yes." "You understand why silence followed?" "Yes." "And you understand that respect is not conditional on room, audience, or lineage?" "Yes." He answered each clearly. "But words are easy in controlled spaces. Consistency requires repetition." She leaned forward slightly. "Would you stand beside me if I added nothing to your name?" The question was simple. No financial qualifiers, no strategic context, just identity. He answered without pause. "Yes." Her eyes did not shift. "Would you introduce me the same way if my firm dissolved tomorrow?" Yes. Would you defend me publicly, the way you once ranked me privately? He inhaled. Yes. The room held still. She sat back again. I don't doubt you believe that right now, she said calmly. But belief under pressure is different. He understood. You want proof, he said. I want consistency, she corrected. Not romance, not promises, not grand gestures. Alignment. You lost me because you thought in hierarchies, she continued. If you want to stand beside me again, you will have to dismantle that thinking first. He nodded slowly. I'm willing to do that. She gathered her portfolio. Then do it, she said. No embrace, no softened tone, just condition. As she stood to leave, he realized something clear. This time, partnership would not be assumed. It would be earned. The first sign of change did not appear in a speech. It appeared in a proposal revision. During the next internal strategy meeting at Larkin Holdings, James requested an additional review of their Lakeshore model. He asked the analytics team to compare projected returns under phased reinvestment structures rather than immediate high-yield concentration. Several executives exchanged glances. That reduces early margins, one board member pointed out. It stabilizes long-term occupancy, James replied evenly, and reduces displacement backlash. The phrasing was deliberate, not emotional, not defensive. Practical. He began attending planning sessions he previously delegated. Instead of summarizing decisions afterward, he invited cross-departmental teams into discussion. He requested data on community impact projections rather than relying solely on asset valuation models. Some within the firm interpreted it as strategic repositioning due to competition. But for James, the shift was internal first. He examined how often he framed decisions around dominance rather than sustainability. He stopped assuming authority guaranteed insight. He started asking questions he once dismissed. What would this look like from the resident's perspective? Silence followed that question the first time he asked it. Larkin Holdings had always valued influence. Now he was introducing accountability. The shift was not dramatic. It was consistent. And consistency is what dismantles old habits. Helena Larkin noticed immediately. She had built her reputation on preserving family stature. Every partnership was vetted for prestige. Every association evaluated for perception. In her private office overlooking the city, she addressed him directly. You're adjusting our tone, she said, fingers steepled. I'm adjusting our model, James replied. To mirror hers? To improve ours? Her gaze sharpened. Legacy is not weakness, she stated. We don't respond to emerging firms by imitating them. We evolve when needed, he answered calmly. Helena stood and walked toward the window. Your grandfather built this company by projecting strength, not concession. Strength and adaptation are not opposites, James said. She turned back toward him. Is this about her? The question lingered. It's about perspective, he replied. Helena studied him carefully. Don't let personal relationships dictate corporate direction. He met her eyes evenly. Corporate direction should not be insulated from ethical review. The statement surprised even him. Helena did not raise her voice, but her silence carried clear disapproval. Tradition resists disruption, especially when disruption begins from within. James left her office understanding something important. Transformation would not be applauded immediately. It would be questioned. Conrad Larkin rarely spoke during conflict. He observed. Weeks after the boardroom presentation, he invited James to lunch without assistants present. No agenda. No formal presentation. They sat in a quiet private dining room at the club Conrad frequented for decades. I've noticed adjustments in your approach, Conrad began. James did not deny it. I'm reassessing certain frameworks, he said. Conrad sipped his water slowly. Because of the competitor? Because of what I overlooked, James replied. Conrad's expression remained neutral. Your mother believes you're overcorrecting. Do you? James asked. Conrad leaned back slightly. I believe growth requires friction. The statement hung between them. Are you leading differently, Conrad continued, because you fear losing influence? No, James said. Because I misunderstood partnership. Conrad studied him for a long moment. Legacy is inherited, Conrad said finally. Wisdom is not. There was no reprimand in his tone. Only evaluation. If you're changing, Conrad added, ensure it's sustainable. Reaction fades. Conviction remains. James nodded. This was not approval, but it was not rejection either. It was acknowledgement. And acknowledgement marked the first subtle shift within the Larkin Foundation. The true test arrived during an industry panel discussion hosted by the Chicago Development Forum. Executives from competing firms were invited to discuss urban growth strategy. The lakeshore redevelopment remained the unspoken centerpiece. Brielle sat 3 seats away from James on stage. Professional, composed, focused. When the moderator asked about emerging hybrid development models, James had an opportunity to minimize her approach. Instead, he chose differently. Jackson Urban Impact has introduced a compelling phased reinvestment framework, he said clearly into the microphone. It reflects thoughtful community integration. The audience shifted. Acknowledgement in competitive environments is rare. Brielle glanced toward him briefly. Not with gratitude. With assessment. He continued. Competition sharpens innovation, and Chicago benefits when development prioritizes both stability and growth. There was no sarcasm, no guarded undertone. Helena, seated in the audience, remained still. Reporters scribbled notes. The narrative shifted from rivalry to dialogue. After the panel, several attendees approached Brielle to discuss collaboration possibilities. James did not interrupt. He did not insert himself. He stepped aside. Recognition without ownership. For the first time publicly, he placed her on equal footing. And people noticed. Weeks later, James began attending neighborhood advisory sessions related to redevelopment planning. Not as keynote speaker, not as featured executive, as participant. He sat among local business owners, housing advocates, and residents concerned about displacement. The conversations were direct. How will this affect rent? What guarantees exist for local hiring? Who holds developers accountable? James listened. He did not interrupt, did not redirect. When asked to respond, he answered plainly. We are reviewing our phased development model. We are evaluating community equity benchmarks. He did not present himself as savior. He presented himself as learner. One resident challenged him openly. Why should we trust legacy firms? Instead of deflecting, he replied, You shouldn't without proof. That answer traveled quietly through the room. Trust cannot be demanded. It must be demonstrated. James began requesting internal audits of long-standing policies. He invited third-party analysts to review impact metrics. The process was slower than he preferred. But sustainable change requires endurance. The final shift was subtle. During a joint advisory roundtable months later, Brielle and James both attended. Not as partners, not as adversaries, as leaders within the same city. When discussion grew heated over zoning density, James instinctively began to respond. Then he paused. He looked toward Brielle. She articulated the balance between economic feasibility and resident stability with clarity. He did not interrupt. He did not interrupt. Did not refine her phrasing. Did not translate her points for the room. He allowed her voice to stand fully. After the session ended, one council member remarked quietly to another, They're different now. James walked toward the exit alone. He understood something that had once eluded him. Leadership is not dominance. Partnership is not hierarchy. Listening requires strength equal to speaking. His transformation was not grand, not theatrical. It was deliberate. And humility, when practiced consistently, reshapes power without announcement. The Chicago Economic Development Forum hosted its annual winter debate at a historic auditorium downtown. Rows of policymakers, investors, urban planners, and journalists filled the hall. The topic centered on long-term urban sustainability and private sector accountability. Brielle and James were both invited as featured panelists, not as a couple, not as rivals, as leaders shaping Chicago's future. They sat at opposite ends of a curved stage table beneath soft lighting. Name placards stood in front of them. Brielle Jackson, founder and CEO, Jackson Urban Impact. James Larkin, executive director, Larkin Holdings. When the moderator opened discussion on redevelopment ethics, Brielle spoke first. She outlined measurable benchmarks for phased construction tied to resident retention rates. Clear, direct, grounded in numbers. James listened attentively, hands folded loosely before him. When it was his turn, he did not counter her model. He expanded on it. "We've adjusted our projections to incorporate similar phased occupancy strategies," he stated. "Sustainability requires more than rapid asset appreciation." The audience reacted with focused attention. This was no longer competition framed by ego. It was dialogue shaped by growth. During audience questions, a journalist asked bluntly, "Are your firms adversaries?" Brielle answered calmly, "We are accountable to the same city." James added, "And accountability should elevate standards, not divide them." Respect did not need emphasis. It was visible in how they addressed each other. By the time the forum concluded, snow had begun falling steadily across downtown Chicago. Streetlights reflected against fresh white layers forming along sidewalks and parked cars. Guests exited the auditorium in clusters, coats wrapped tightly, voices softened by cold air. Brielle stepped outside alone, adjusting her scarf against the wind. James followed a few steps behind, but did not rush to close the distance. They stood near the entrance beneath an overhang as snow collected along the curb. For a moment, neither spoke. City traffic moved slowly through the falling snow. "You handled that question well," he said finally. She glanced toward him. "It wasn't a trap." "It could have been," he replied. She studied his tone. No defensiveness, no subtle correction, just acknowledgement. Snow settled lightly along the shoulders of his coat. The scene felt quiet in a way the rooftop never had. Months earlier, silence between them held fracture. Now it held evaluation. "You've been consistent," she said carefully. "I intend to remain that way," he answered. There was no urgency in his voice, no attempt to reclaim what was lost, only steady presence. The snow continued falling as if marking time rather than mood. They walked a short distance down the block to avoid the crowd. Their breath formed faint clouds in the winter air. "I didn't expect public acknowledgement from you," Brielle said. "I didn't expect to need correction from you," he replied evenly. She considered that. "You didn't need correction," she said. "You needed awareness." He nodded slightly. "I had to confront how often I equated status with worth," he admitted. "That thinking was automatic." "And now?" she asked. "Now I question it," he said. They paused at a street corner as traffic passed. She watched his posture, the way he spoke, the absence of performance. "I don't need validation," she said clearly. "I need partnership." "I understand," he replied. "Partnership isn't seasonal," she added. "It's consistent whether the room is full or empty." He met her eyes. "I won't speak about you differently in private than I do in public," he said. The statement carried weight because it was not dramatic. It was measured. She did not smile, but she did not step away. Growth had moved them to this point. Whether it would hold remained to be seen. Weeks later, the Larkin Foundation hosted its annual strategic funding reception. The guest list included donors, policy leaders, and long-standing business allies. Brielle received a formal invitation, not through James, through official channels. When she arrived, she noticed subtle shifts in how people greeted her. Recognition preceded introduction. James approached her near the entrance. "Thank you for coming," he said, tone professional. He guided her toward a group of trustees engaged in discussion. "I'd like to introduce you to Brielle Jackson," he said clearly. "Founder and CEO of Jackson Urban Impact. No qualifiers, no softening language, no relational framing, just title." One trustee responded with genuine interest. "We've been reviewing your Lakeshore model." James stepped aside as the conversation unfolded. He did not dominate it, did not redirect attention. Later that evening, when a donor referenced her firm as emerging, James corrected the phrasing lightly. "It's established," he said, "and influential." The exchange was small, but visible. Respect is often confirmed in moments others overlook. Brielle noticed. Throughout the evening, Brielle moved comfortably through conversations. She discussed workforce pipelines, impact metrics, urban planning reforms. Helena observed from across the room. Conrad engaged her briefly in conversation, asking thoughtful questions about scalability. She answered without hesitation. No one treated her as an accessory. No one referenced her past engagement. Her presence stood independently. At one point, James joined her near a display highlighting future redevelopment initiatives. He did not stand in front of her. He stood beside her. Shoulders aligned, equal spacing, a subtle detail, yet significant. A board member approached and asked whether their firms might consider collaboration in future bids. James glanced toward Brielle before responding. "We evaluate partnerships based on shared values," he said. He did not answer for her. She added, "Alignment matters." The word carried new meaning now. Not hierarchy, not ranking. Alignment rooted in respect. As the event concluded, guests departed with measured impressions. The balance between them had shifted fully into view. Respect was no longer private correction. It was public consistency. And when respect becomes visible, hierarchy loses ground. 1 year after the rooftop engagement celebration, James hosted a private dinner at the same terrace venue. The lighting was softer this time, the guest list smaller. Familiar faces sat around a long rectangular table positioned near the glass railing. Everett Hale was there, 2 other longtime friends, a few business associates who had once laughed easily beneath city lights. But this evening carried different energy. No announcement banners, no champagne tower, no orchestrated celebration, just conversation. Brielle arrived beside James, not trailing him. She wore a structured ivory suit, understated and confident. Her posture steady, expression calm. Several guests offered polite greetings. A few appeared uncertain. The memory of that earlier night lingered unspoken. James did not avoid it. He invited them all intentionally. Dinner progressed with controlled small talk at first. Market trends, travel, new acquisitions. Everett raised a glass midway through the evening. To growth, he joked lightly. James set his glass down instead of lifting it. The shift in his body language was subtle, but deliberate. He rose slowly from his chair. The same terrace, the same skyline, but a different man standing at the center. He did not wait for silence to be granted. He created it. "I asked you here for a reason," he began. Conversations faded. Utensils paused midair. "1 year ago on this terrace, I said something about the woman sitting beside me." He did not glance at Brielle yet. He looked directly at Everett. "And you all laughed." Everett shifted in his chair slightly. James continued, "I measured worth through status, through lineage, through alignment that served my comfort." The tone was not aggressive. It was clear. I confused possession with partnership. No one interrupted. He did not dramatize the statement. He did not soften it. "I believed choosing someone elevated them," he said. Instead of recognizing that standing beside someone requires equality, he finally turned toward Brielle briefly, before facing the group again. "The words I spoke that night reflected arrogance." The admission was direct, not strategic, not performative, just owned. Power often hides from correction. Tonight, it faced it. "I was proud," James continued, "not of achievement, not of success, proud in a way that ranked people." His voice remained steady. "I grew up inside rooms where legacy was currency. I internalized that structure without questioning it." Everett cleared his throat lightly. "It was a joke." James shook his head once. "No," he said calmly. "It wasn't." Silence deepened. It was belief. The distinction mattered. He placed both hands lightly on the back of his chair. "I believed that offering marriage was elevation. I believed my name carried weight that others should be grateful for." He paused. "And that belief cost me." The air felt heavier, not tense, but reflective. "I am not apologizing to regain comfort," he continued. "I am acknowledging that pride disguised as logic diminishes people. Helena was not present. Conrad was not present. This was personal accountability in front of peers who once reinforced hierarchy. I am unlearning that framework," he said. His words were not grand. They were deliberate, and deliberate change unsettles old circles. "I lost her because of that mindset," he said plainly. The statement hung in the air, not melodramatic, not self-pitying, just fact. "I spoke as if she were fortunate," he continued, "when I was the one fortunate enough to stand beside her." He turned fully toward Brielle now. She remained seated, composed, watching. "I underestimated strength that does not seek validation," he said. The group shifted uncomfortably. Everett lowered his gaze. When she left, James added, "She did not argue. She did not create spectacle. She moved forward." He inhaled slowly. "And that forced me to examine what I valued. There was no attempt to dramatize loss, no emotional display, just recognition. I am not standing here because she returned," he clarified. "I am standing here because I needed to confront what I believed. Acknowledgement restores credibility, not because it erases past behavior, because it reframes it." He resumed his seat slowly. Throughout his address, Brielle remained still. She did not nod encouragement, did not interrupt, did not rescue him from discomfort. When he sat down, several guests avoided direct eye contact. The atmosphere had shifted from casual to reflective. Everett lifted his glass cautiously. "To clarity," he said this time, quieter. Brielle did not lift hers immediately. She looked at James, not searching for performance, assessing consistency. He did not lean toward her, did not whisper reassurance. He allowed the moment to stand on its own. Power restored through acknowledgement does not require applause. It requires witness. After dinner, as guests departed, one business associate approached Brielle privately. "You handled this with strength," he said. She responded calmly, "Strength begins with boundaries." When the terrace cleared, she and James stood alone beneath the city lights. No declarations, no promises, just alignment that had been tested publicly and privately. He did not stand in front of her. He stood beside her. Equal distance, equal posture. Respect was no longer spoken. It was demonstrated. 6 months after the debate forum, the city of Chicago announced its final decision on the Lakeshore redevelopment. Rather than awarding the contract to a single firm, officials approved a joint venture model. Larkin Holdings and Jackson Urban Impact would collaborate under a shared governance structure. The decision surprised some analysts. Legacy paired with innovation, scale paired with strategy, experience paired with evolution. Press releases highlighted balanced leadership and community accountability benchmarks embedded into the agreement. Brielle and James stood at separate podiums during the announcement. No dramatic glances, no public declarations of personal reconciliation, just professionals presenting a unified development strategy. The project would move forward under dual oversight. Checks, balances, transparent reporting. This was not compromise born of pressure. It was alignment earned through scrutiny. The rooftop moment that once defined hierarchy had led to this outcome. Not dominance, partnership. And partnership structured on equality holds differently. Contract day arrived in a government conference hall filled with city officials and legal teams. 2 signature lines rested at the bottom of the Lakeshore Agreement. James Larkin, Executive Director, Larkin Holdings. Brielle Jackson, Founder and CEO, Jackson Urban Impact. No secondary placement, no subordinate clause. Side by side. When they stepped forward to sign, cameras flashed briefly. James signed first, then stepped aside without comment. Brielle signed next. Their signatures carried equal legal authority, equal responsibility, equal accountability. As documents were exchanged, a city commissioner remarked, "This partnership reflects the direction Chicago needs." Neither responded with pride. They responded with discipline. Later, as the room cleared, James turned to her. "Thank you," he said simply. "For collaboration," she corrected. Titles had shifted. Posture had shifted. Power had balanced. Ink on paper does not erase the past, but it can formalize growth. There was no second proposal. No staged apology beneath city lights. No grand gesture. They did not recreate the rooftop. They did not attempt to overwrite history with spectacle. Instead, they dated again. Quiet dinners, unstructured walks, conversations without agenda. They discussed leadership pressures, family expectations, personal blind spots. They addressed patterns openly. When Helena questioned whether reconciliation was wise, James responded calmly, not defensively. When Darius observed them during a Sunday dinner, he saw no posturing, only steadiness. They agreed on one condition between them. If respect ever felt conditional again, they would walk away without hesitation. Engagement would not be revisited until trust felt natural, not negotiated. For now, growth was enough. Maturity was enough. And sometimes rebuilding requires patience more than passion. Time-tested consistency. Public appearances continued. Board meetings continued. Community reviews continued. James no longer adjusted how he introduced her based on audience. Brielle no longer filtered her voice to protect legacy comfort. They challenged each other directly in private, without hierarchy. When disagreements surfaced during project phases, they resolved them through structured debate, not emotional withdrawal. Trust returned, gradually. Not because of one speech, not because of one apology, because behavior remained aligned. Slow rebuilding strengthens foundations. They no longer defined their relationship through status or optics. They defined it through mutual accountability. Neither stood beneath. Neither stood above. They stood beside. And beside requires daily intention. In the end, this story was never about revenge. It was about recognition. When someone places you beneath them, you have two choices: argue for position, or remove yourself from ranking entirely. Brielle chose clarity over chaos. James chose reflection over defensiveness. Growth required humility. Respect required consistency. Partnership required equality. If you have ever been underestimated, if you have ever heard someone diminish your worth, if you have ever walked away instead of begging to stay, have you ever chosen yourself over someone who underestimated you? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might strengthen someone else. And subscribe for more stories where dignity wins over pride, because love should never require shrinking, and respect should never be optional.